This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Isai. Bruchim Habayim to the Kollel Agar de Pirko here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. Parshas Vayeshev, but today we're going to speak about Chanukah. And we begin with an incredible Gemara. The Gemara gives us an account about the wife of one of the great Tanoim, the wife of Rabbi Meir. And if I could take the opportunity, actually I'm working now on a sefer on the Tana Rabbi Meir. So trying to connect Rabbi Meir to all the time periods of the year, beginning with Yom Noraim, Sukkot, Chanukah, Purim, Pesach, Shavuos, the 3 weeks, and a lot of mitzvahs. So if anybody out there wants to be a patron of the sefer, then please let us know. Okay, so the Gemara tells us that Bruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir, was the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. And we know various insights about the life of Bruria, the Gemara in Brachos, Sandaf Yud. And her sister was taken to a bad place. Her sister was taken to a Beis Zoinos. In English, you call it a brothel. Good, nobody knows what that is. Okay, so, and Bruria, her sister, was very embarrassed. It was demeaning that her sister was taken to this bad place. And Rabbi Meir wanted to rescue his sister-in-law. Now, don't try this at home, okay? And certainly if you're a rabbi, this is not a good place to be caught. But Rabbi Meir took a sack of cash, which is also not a good thing to be caught with in a brothel. And Rabbi Meir goes into the Beis Zoinos. And he says to himself, if she's clean and she never did an Avera, then I can be confident that a miracle will happen. And if she did an Avera, a miracle won't happen. So, Rabbi Meir wanted to see if he could rescue his sister-in-law, so he takes the basket of, the bag of cash, and he goes over to her, sort of masquerading as somebody else, and he says to her, Hashmi'ini li, listen to me. He made an attempt. So she pushed him off. She says to him, no, Dishtanana, I'm menstruating, I'm anida, it's not a good time, bad time. So Rabbi Meir says, no problem, just let me know when you're ready, give me a buzz, and I'll wait for you. So she said, come on, check out the schayra around here. There's much better schayra than me. Maybe choose somebody else. I mean, you have a very large assortment to choose from, and I don't think I'm the best schayra over here. So Rabbi Meir figures this is her common refrain. She probably tells this to everybody. She must be clean, and for sure a miracle would happen. So Rabbi Meir goes to the guardian, and he says to the guardian, give me this lady. So the guardian says, are you crazy? I'm afraid of the government. So Rabbi Meir hands the guy a bag of cash, but the guy's still afraid. So Rabbi Meir says, no problem, I'm going to give you the magic formula. You say the magic formula and it will work every time. Just say, Elokah de Meir Aneni. He says, come on, Elokah de Meir Aneni, you got to be kidding me. Who says it works? So Rabbi Meir says, watch this, check this out. There were 2 dogs that every day, there were a bunch of dogs that would eat people. And Rabbi Meir took a clod of earth, threw it at the dogs. All of a sudden these dogs, as they say, let sleeping dogs lie, and they started jumping toward Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said, Elokah de Meir Aneni. He had that little magnet on the pushka, and he said, Elokah de Meir Aneni, and he was spared. So what happened? So they wanted to know, where'd the lady go? So the guard said, well, actually this guy, he said, that guy? So they engraved Rabbi Meir on the gates of Rome. And they said, anyone who sees this man, he's a wanted man. Bring him to us. Anyway, now Rabbi Meir has nowhere to run. Where's Rabbi Meir going to go? So he went to the Beis Zoinos. Where else is a rabbi going to hang out if they're looking for him? So Rabbi Meir went to the Beis Zoinos, and some say he did something else. Some say he stuck his finger in Bishul Akum, and he quickly licked the other finger so that they shouldn't catch on that this is Rabbi Meir. Be it as a way, Rabbi Meir figured this is not good for his reputation. He's first in one Beis Zoinos, so Rabbi Meir decided he's going to flee to Bavel. And then the Gemara concludes maybe another version is he didn't flee to Bavel because of this episode, but rather he fled to Bavel because of another episode. Without getting too graphic, the Gemara is making reference to a different episode where I'm not going to translate right now. I can't get into this for certain reasons, but the Gemara says that there's a concept that women, nashim daitan kaloisein, okay? Whatever that, it means whatever, have a hamevin yavin. And there was a certain individual that did not like this teaching, nashim daitan kalos, and her name was Bruria. She did not think, she was a very intelligent woman, she was a very smart woman, she did not accept nashim daitan kalos. So, Rabbi Meir wanted to demonstrate, yes, in fact, nashim daitan kalos, so one of Rabbi Meir's talmidim basically tried to seduce her, and she fell for it, and he said, you see, nashim daitan kalos, and she was so upset that she basically committed suicide, and Rabbi Meir did not, it was not good for Rabbi Meir, so Rabbi Meir had a skedaddle. So the Gemara gives one of two reasons why Rabbi Meir had to run to Bavel. Either because of his rescue of his sister-in-law, or because of what happened to his wife. Okay? So there are a lot of things we could possibly discuss here. What we just said was loaded, but we're going to focus on one particular line in this Gemara. And that is the tefillah of Rabbi Meir. What was Rabbi Meir's tefillah? Elokah Demeir Aneni. Comes the Marsha, and the Marsha asks, V'yesh l'daktek, Heich Yiched Rabbi Meir Shmoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Atzmoi B'chayav. How could Rabbi Meir designate the name of God upon him while he was still alive? How could Rabbi Meir say, Elokah Demeir, the God of Meir? We all know God does not designate His name on even a tzaddik while they're still alive. You will never find in the whole Torah, Elokei Yecheskel, Elokei Yeshaya, Elokei Oivadya, Elokei Hosea, Elokei anybody. Elokei Moshe. Because God, the rule is, Al tamin ba'atzmcha ad yom misa. You could be a big tzaddik, you could be an old tzaddik, you could be over 150 years old, sitting in an apartment with no olam hazeh, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says we cannot be confident in you that you will remain a tzaddik. The only time we know that somebody is a true tzaddik is once they're in the next world. But so long as you still have bechira chavshis, there are no guarantees. So, the Marsha wants to know, how could Rabbi Meir say, Elokah Demeir Aneni? So Yitzchak was a kamat, like Rashi says. Yitzchak was already a choila. Yitzchak already did not really have bechira chavshis. But God said Elokei Yitzchak. Yaakov said Pachad Yitzchak, right? So, okay. So this is the kasha of the Marsha. The Marsha even says, Shenemar Elokei Avraham Upachad Yitzchak. Says the Marsha, Rabbi Meir in the first answer of the Marsha, Rabbi Meir did not mean the God of Meir. What Rabbi Meir meant was Elokah Demeir la'aretz v'ladorim oleha berachamim. When he said Demeir, he didn't mean me. He didn't mean his name. He meant the God who illuminates the earth. Not him, the God who illuminates. But he would never say Elokah Demeir, because God does not associate His name with tzadikim b'chayehem. That is the first answer of the Marsha. The second answer of the Marsha is Oisha Amar Elokah Demeir Lanu b'malchus Yavan HaKodemes. God who illuminated our lives in the earlier miracle with the Neros of Chanukah, like the Python redacted Mi Yoer Lecha Meir. Meaning we know that in the times of Chanukah, God illuminated our lives. God was Meir for us. Hu Yanenu. So Meir is being mispalel. God, you just illuminated our lives in the times of the Syrian Greeks. So too, in this evil empire, under the dominion and sovereignty of the Romans, in this Golus that we're in today, please illuminate our lives and give us a miracle as well. So again, in the second answer of the Marsha, the Marsha explains that tefillah of Rabbi Meir was not a reference to his own name, but rather he was invoking and he was referring to the miracle of Chanukah. God who illuminated our lives during the times of the miracle of Chanukah, He should illuminate our lives now as well. So, Rabbi Isai, the question is, Rabbi Meir would go around saying this tefillah. He told the Roman general, if they're looking for you, say the tefillah. If the dogs are after you, say the tefillah. Whatever you need, say the tefillah. You lose your car keys for the 19th time in one day. Elokah Demeir Aneni. You can't find your left sock. Elokah Demeir Aneni. It's Tisha B'Av morning. You don't know where your crock is because you haven't seen it since Yom Kippur. Elokah Demeir Aneni. Whatever you need, Elokah Demeir Aneni. You lost your mind. Elokah Demeir Aneni. right? Whatever you're missing. What does Elokah Meir Aneni mean? Elokah Meir Aneni means God who illuminated our lives in the times of Chanukah. Why do we specifically reference, why did Rabbi Meir always reference the miracle of Chanukah? What is Rabbi Meir's connection to the miracle of Chanukah? Certainly the Rebbe Shalom illuminated our lives many times in our history, but we know specifically in the times of Chanukah, the Syrian Greeks darkened our eyes, as we know the Medrash says, on the pasuk v'haaretz hoisa soihu v'avoihu v'choshech al pnei sahim. If you look at number 8, v'choshech soihu is galus Bavel, boihu is galus Madai, choshech is galus Yavan. The lashon of the Medrash is shehechshicha eineihem shal Yisrael b'gzeiroi seyen shehoisa imeres lahem. And we're going to come back to this decree. The Syrian Greeks made us ride on the horn of an ox, that we have no chelek in the God of Israel. By the way, the Rambam writes in the Geras HaTeman that this gezerah lasted for 52 years. That kisva karen ashar she'ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. So the Syrian Greeks darkened our eyes. So God illuminated our eyes in the times of Chanukah. But what is Rabbi Meir's specific connection to the Yom Tov of Chanukah, that he was always invoking the salvation of the Yom Tov of Chanukah? We encounter another interesting thing. The Magen Avram writes in Siman Tafresh Ayin that the minhag is that the Na'arim Ho'aniyim, the young poor men, are customarily l'sabiv b'Chanukah al psachim. They go around the doors collecting tzedakah on Chanukah. In other words, the Magen Avram is bringing that there's a minhag to give out tzedakah to the poor on Chanukah. Now why? Why should you give tzedakah to the poor on Chanukah? Says the Magen Avram, look in the Sefer Chanukah's Habayis. So I always wondered, the Sefer Chanukah's Habayis, it must be a really early Sefer if the Magen Avram is quoting it. I don't have the Sefer Chanukah's Habayis. So 2 years ago I was at a wedding in Williamsburg on Chanukah, and I passed by a Sfarim store, and I couldn't help myself, and I see over there's a Sefer they were selling that was printed in honor of the grandson of the Skver Rebbe. And who was it? The Chanukah's Habayis, written by Reb Shaul ben David, who's a Kadmoin, someone who lived in the generation of the Marsha, who wrote a Sefer on Haneros Halalu Anachnu Madlikim. That's the whole Sefer is on Haneros Halalu. And he brings that Haneros Halalu either has 44 words or 36 words, Keneged, the Neros of Chanukah. Now in our version of Haneros Halalu, you don't have not 44 and not 36. That's because we don't have the correct version. But if you look at the correct version, brought in the Tosefta, it's either 44 words or 36 words. And there's a whole perush there. And in this perush on Haneros Halalu, he writes that the word shemen, in Atbash, we know there's a numerical formula, a formula of gematria called Atbash, where you substitute the first letter for the last letter. And if you take the word shemen, the shin becomes a beis, the mem becomes a yud, the tzadi becomes a tes, you get bit. Nothing to do with bitcoins, you get bit. Bit is gematria 21, ekya. Okay, what are you going to do with that? Says the Taras Habayis, there's a great secret here. Chanukah be'at bash is gematria soid tzedakah. Chanukah, which is at bash, turns into a samach, tes, hey, pei, lamed, tzadi equals 269. That's the gematria of soid tzedakah. In other words, if you want to know what Chanukah is the secret of tzedakah. Now, I'm not sure how many people have heard about the mitzvah of giving tzedakah on Chanukah. Many people, they send with their kids to the Rebbi, they give them Chanukah gelt, but that the whole definition of Chanukah should be soid tzedakah. The Magen Avram brings it to minhag, but the Chanukah's Habayis writes, the secret of Chanukah is the secret of tzedakah. I don't think many even have heard that there's an inyan of giving tzedakah on Chanukah, let alone that the entire secret of Chanukah should be the secret of tzedakah. Okay, what is the meaning of this? What is the connection between Chanukah and soid tzedakah? In Al Anisim, after we say Rabim Biad Ma'atim, Tmeim Biad Tahirim, Rishon Biad Tzadikim, we say V'achar Kain, and afterwards Ba'u Vanecha Ledver Beisecha. Your children came to your holy devir. So there seems to be an extra word, the word Banecha. Why does it have to say Banecha? It could say V'achar Kain, Ba'u Yisrael, or just Bo. We know who we're talking about. We're talking about the Rabim Biad Ma'atim. We're talking about us. It didn't say in the beginning, B'mei Ma'atim Kishamda Machus Yom Rasha Al Banecha La'ashkicham Tarasecha. Why the emphasis? V'achar Kain Bo Vanecha Lidver Beisecha. By the way, in context of the miracle of Chanukah, the Navi Zechariah refers to the Jewish people as Banim. If you look in Parak Tes, Pasuk Yud Gimel of Zechariah, Ki darachti li Yehuda. Yehuda was darach to me, Keshes milesi Ephraim, va'irarti v'nayich Tzion al banayich Yavan. And your children, Tzion, I aroused them on your children, Yavan. So we see also this description of the Jewish people as Banim in the context of Chanukah. Even the Medrash in the Psikta says, why do we light Neros on Chanukah? When the Banav of the Chashmonai defeated Malchus Yavan, and the Psikta cites this pasuk. Okay, now we're going to ask some very important questions. These questions are raised in a well-known piece in the Chidah. The reason why it's well-known, and it's about to become well-known in 1 minute. The Chidah, in one of his great Sfarim, the Rosh David, he says that although the Yevanim tried to abolish Torah mitzvahs in general, they were after 3 mitzvahs in particular. What were they? Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. Why dafka Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos? Okay, Shabbos, I know, is the cornerstone of Judaism. But Milah, why dafka Milah? Why dafka Chodesh? And the other question is, this is a very serious question, is if you look in the Medrash Rabbah, all the Medrash Rabbah says that the Yevanim try to do is that they made us write on the horn of an ox that we have no share in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oimeres lachem, shahoisa oimeres lahem, kisvu al keren hashar, she'en lachem chelek b'ilkei Yisrael. The Medrash doesn't say they try to abolish Chodesh. The Medrash doesn't say they try to abolish Milah. The Medrash doesn't say they try to abolish Shabbos. And yet, Chazal tell us Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. So how do you reconcile that which Chazal say that they try to abolish Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos with the words of the Medrash that they try to they enforce that we write on the horn of an ox, Ein lachem chelek b'elokei Yisrael. Now, why do they make us write this on the horn of an ox? Why dafka on an ox? So the Pashup shot is, they didn't have vehicles back then. If they would have had automobiles, we've had to put a bumper sticker on. That's their mode of transportation. But on a deeper level, what is the significance of the ox? The Chidah continues. There was a great man by the name of Yosef HaTzadik, and he becomes second in command. Ubila doilo yaram ish es roishay b'chol eretz es yadav es roish b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. So Yosef turns to Parai, Yaseh Farai v'yavked pikidim al haaretz v'chimesh es eretz Mitzrayim b'sheva shnei hasava v'chimesh. And the Darshei Rishumai say that Yosef wasn't just saying prepare Eretz Mitzrayim, but v'chimesh. Yosef was instituting 3 mitzvahs in Mitzrayim. Those 3 mitzvahs are Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. What was Yosef getting at by instituting Mitzrayim? Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. What's the meaning of this? But perhaps we already begin to see that when the Yevanim wanted us to write on the horn of the ox that we have no chelek in Elokei Yisrael, we know who is called an ox in the Chumash? Yosef. Bechar Shairai Hadarlai. So Yosef institutes Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos, and the Yevanim are trying to be oiker, the institution of Yosef HaTzadik. Well, says the Chidah, an amazing thing, a wonderful thing. The Chidah writes elsewhere that Yisoid Musad, V'hu Pinas Yikras Shekol HaTorah Yasta Aleha. The foundation principle of Klal Yisrael, Miyoim Ha'itzioi Hashem Oisanu Me'eretz Mitzrayim V'yad Heina. From the day God took us out of Egypt until today. The foundation principle of it all is Banim Atem L'Hashem Lekechem. that we are the children of God. We are not just God's handiwork, we're not just God's creations, but we are His children. We are His beloved children. If we could say in almost a literal sense, we are literally the children of God. And we're going to explain this. Now, Yosef knew that we needed to be in Mitzrayim for 430 years. That's what God said of Moshe B'nai Yisrael. You're going to stay there 430 years. But how many years did we actually work in intense labor? 86 years. So basically, we didn't really fulfill the full time. We did 1/5. We only did 1/5 of 430. 1/5 of 430 is 86. So Yosef says, how can this be justified? That God says 430 and we're going to get out after 86 years. Well, yes, the Mitzrayim abused us and they harassed us and we, so to speak, did overtime. But if our relationship with the Ribbono Shel Olam is that of a servant to a master, then who cares a little bit more labor, a little bit less labor, if at the end of the day, God says 430, 430 is 430. You can't start cutting corners. But Yosef says, but if our relationship with God is that of a son, and the Rebbe Shem loves us like a father, then if the Mitzrayim overstep their rights to work us, then perhaps the Rebbe Shem will construe it and consider it as if we did overtime and let us out early. And therefore Yosef's role, Yosef wanted to make sure that it was established that the Rebbe Shem's relationship with us is that of a father to a son. It's interesting, there's a Tosfos in Sanhedrin on Daf Lamed Tes. You ready for this Tosfos? Frek Tosfos. It's not on the sheet. It's in the Chidah. It's quoted in the Chidah in number 26. The Tosfos in Sanhedrin Lamed Tes asks, when Moshe died, who buried Moshe? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Fine, so that means Hashem became Tameh. So here's the problem. Hashem's a Kohen. How could Hashem bury Moshe? He's a Kohen. That's not a kasha. Come on, Moshe, nobody knew where he was buried. So he's a Meis Mitzvah, so a Kohen could be Matame. But that's not Tosfos' kasha. Tosfos' kasha is, if God is a Kohen, and God was Matame to Moshe, what mikvah did he go in after the Kfura? That's Tosfos' kasha, not my kasha. Tosfos' kasha. Now, there are big mikvahs in the world. A Skavera mikvah, a Satmar mikvah, a Belz has a big mikvah, but as big as they are, they're not big enough for the Rebbeinu Shalom. God doesn't fit in the ocean. So what mikvah did he go in? That's Tosfos' kasha. So Tosfos says he was metaher be'esh. Frek the chidah, but the Rebbeinu Shalom's a kohen gadol. So even that's the chidah. So even if he's a kohen, so the chidah says no. Be'anva sanusa, he didn't prav like a kohen gadol. That's the chidah on Tosfos. But what do we learn from here? That God is, so to speak, subject to laws of Tumah V'Tahara, and we have to navigate what the Rebbeinu Shalom does with the laws of Tumah V'Tahara. So the Chidah wants to know, so how did God take us out of Mitzrayim, Makam Gilulim? It was the night of Makas B'charis, Ein Bayis Asher Ein Shameis. How did God take us out? God was Matame himself to us. Why? To demonstrate that we are Banim L'Hashem. And to a Ben, a Kohen could be Matame. You know why the Chidah says God wanted to demonstrate that He's our Father? Because otherwise we can't get out in the first place, because we still have to do another 344 years. The only way we could get out after 86 years is if we're Hashem's children. So Hashem had to establish that He's our Father. How does He establish He's our Father? Hashem goes down into Mitzrayim and He's Matame Himself to Klal Yisrael, demonstrating He's our Father. If He's our Father, then how did the Mitzrayim have a right to abuse us so much? That's how we got out. If He wouldn't have shown He's our Father, we couldn't have gotten out. That's the Chidah. So the Chidah continues. Who instituted and who established for all time that in fact our relationship with God is the relationship of a father to a child? Yosef HaTzadik. Because Yosef in Mitzrayim instituted 3 mitzvahs. What are the 3 mitzvahs? Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. Well, says the Chidah, Shabbos demonstrates very clearly that we are Banim L'Hashem. Because Shabbos is God's scepter. Because after all, God rests on Shabbos. What would be the status of somebody who uses the scepter of the king? He's a Marid B'Malchus. That's the reason why Goisha Shavas is Chayiv Misa. Why, if a Gentile keeps Shabbos, are they liable to capital punishment? Because they are not the children of Hashem. As much as you like to hear, after all mankind are the children of God. It's a bunch of rubbish. It's not true. Not all of mankind are the children of God. All of mankind are the creations of God. Only the Jewish people are the children of God. Goy sheshavas is chayiv misa, says the Chida. Therefore, Yosef instituted Shabbos to demonstrate we are banim l'Hashem. And there's only one person in the palace. If he's walking around with the scepter, the king's going to say, zisa yingala. The kid. Maybe the king won't like it, but the kid could get away with it. The Chida continues. What about Chodesh? Chodesh also. Chodesh demonstrates that we are the children of Hashem. After all, atem afilu shoygagim, afilu mazidim, afilu mutayim. Chodesh demonstrates that the Rebbeinu Shem humbles himself and follows along our legislation. Chodesh demonstrates that we are the children of Hashem. We're chavivim etzloi. That's Amar Abaye. Hilkoch sarach lamemra me'umad. Ilmole lo yizachu Yisrael el lahakbil pnei avihem shebashamayim pamachas b'chodesh. So Chodesh demonstrates we're God's children. Says Bnei Yissaschar, what do we say in the nusach of Kiddush Levana? Ateres tiferes La'amuse boten ilmole anshe knesset agdola yasta efshar la'imra. That what are we called? Amuse boten. That God carried us in His womb. Could you have said that on your own? That would have been apikarsus if you would have said that. But Chazal allow us to use this allegory that the Rebbeinu Shem Kiviyachal carried us in His womb. That's what we learn from Chodesh. And what do we learn from Mila? The Chida writes, from Mila, the Zayar says, I notrin bris inon banim. Mila gives us the status of banim. So Yosef knew the only way we're getting out of Mitzrayim early is if God considers us children. And therefore Yosef was v'chimesh es eretz Mitzrayim. But there's one thing the Yevanim wanted us to feel. The Yevanim said, I don't want you to consider yourself banim l'Hashem. Who do you think you are? What makes you more banim than we? That's why the pasuk in Zechariah says that the Yevanim also consider themselves banim. The Yevanim said, you look back at number 6, Ki darachti li Yehuda keshes, milesi Ephraim, va'arirarti banayich tzion banayich Yavan. So the Yevanim wanted Klal Yisrael to feel that they're not banim. So they said, Kisvu al keren ashar. Now listen carefully. They're mevato chodesh, they're mevato mila, they're mevato Shabbos. And they said, we don't want you to reckon yourself as banim. So we asked the stira, but that's not what the Medrash says. The Medrash says they wanted us to write on the keren of the shar, they have no chelek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How does that reconcile with v'chimesh, chodesh, mila, and Shabbos? Listen carefully. What does it mean that we're banim l'Hashem? What's a ben? Ben, the father contributes the genetic code of the child. That means you could look in the child's DNA and you will see in the child's DNA the DNA of his father. So in what way can we consider ourselves banim la'makim? What does this concept mean? So the Chida's great-grandfather, even though the Chida always calls him my grandfather, but it was his great-grandfather. So if somebody wants to ask the Chida, why do you call the Chesed li Avram your grandfather? Is your great-grandfather? So the Chida wrote a tshuva to answer that question. Okay? But we'll call him the grandfather Chida, that's what he calls him. If you look at number 17. Vahatam she Yisrael nikru banim. Why are we called banim? Because just like a ben is a chelek of the father. He came out of the loins of the father. Therefore a son is naturally inclined to be interested in that which his father is interested in. A son is naturally inclined to act and accord himself and follow the practices and customs the way the father acts. Meaning because the child is literally a piece of his father, a child will naturally act like his father. So too Klal Yisrael, our genetic makeup, our soul, our composition, our personality is made of the same material, which is zach, dak, and naki. Therefore, it is the nature of a Jew to be merachim, just like the Rebbeinu Shalom is merachim, because we're made out of the same material. Where it's the nature of a Jew to want to do Torah, to want to follow the mitzvahs, because we are literally a chelek of Hashem. A chelek of Hashem? What does that mean, a chelek of Hashem? No, yes, our soul is literally a chelek of Hashem. How do we know our soul is a chelek of Hashem? Because the pasuk says, "Ki chelek Hashem amoy." Says the Chesed Avram, the concept of banim atem Hashem Elokeichem emanates from the pasuk, "Ki chelek Hashem amoy." The concept that we are banim emanates from the pasuk in Hazinu, "Ki chelek Hashem amoy." According to the Chesed Avram, we have a beautiful way to reconcile the two gezeros of the Yevanim. The Yevanim try to abolish Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos, because they wanted us to feel we're not banim. But that's not what the Medrash says. The Medrash says we had to write on the shar, Ein lachem chelek b'elokei Yisrael. It's the same thing. It's the same gezerah. They wanted to abolish Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos because they wanted us to feel that why do you Jews consider yourself more a chelek, a piece of the divine more than us? Why do you consider your composition holier, greater, more elevated, more spiritual than us? In other words, the concept of banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem emanates from the concept of ki chelek Hashem amoy. So the Medrash is basically encapsulating what does it mean the Yevanim wanted to abolish Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos. What it means in a nutshell is we had to write on the Keren Ashar, meaning be oiker, the lesson of Yosef. Yosef instituted were banim l'Hashem. He instituted Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos, and the Yevanim wanted to be oiker, the concept that we're chelek Hashem. Now I want to say something. I never said this before. The Netziv says on the pasuk, Yaakov ki chelek Hashem amoy, Yaakov chevel nachalosai. We're like a rope. The Chidah says so beautiful. What does it mean we're like a chelek of Hashem? If you take a rope consists of thousands of little strands. But on the top of the rope, it's tied as one entity. But it really consists of so every Jew has a neshama. The neshama is like one of the very thin strands of the main rope. But lamala, it's all one big neshama. Which neshama is that? Nishma de Nishmasen, the neshama of God Himself. That's why what it's similar to is a wick, which is mefutalim yafeh, which is spun well. In other words, the wick is really the analogy of the concept that Yidden are a chevel of God, a chelek of God, because the wick consists of individual strands which come together to be one entity. The wick represents the concept of banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. When we say we're banim, that means literally our souls, every Jew's soul is one thin strand of the soul of all souls, which is God Almighty. That's what we mean, that we're created b'tselem Elokim. There is some remote, and had the Torah not said this, we probably would not even be allowed to say this, but there is some remote similarity and dimyon between our spiritual makeup and that of the Almighty. So this was the goal of Yosef, to teach, to institute, to legislate. We are banim l'Hashem because that's the only way we're getting out of Mitzrayim. And Hashem confirmed that when He was metame to us, the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, even though He's a kohen, but to show that we're banim. Now just to give a little bit more elucidation, the Gra writes in his commentary to Bereshis Yahel Ar, number 23, that what does it mean Yisrael are called banim? We have something called Nishmas Atzilus, which means the spiritual quality of the soul. All mankind, all human beings have a soul, but the spiritual quality of our soul comes from the highest source, the Olam HaAtzilus. So now we could add one added Nakuda. If the Yevanim really, even though they wanted to abolish Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos, but what they were getting at was they were trying to be oiker, the concept that we are banim la'makom, therefore they made us write Ein lachem chelek b'elokei Yisrael. Where did they make us write this? On the horn of a ox, right? So on the first level we said, because they picked an ox, because Yosef was the one who instituted Chodesh, Milan, Shabbos. But there's another idea that the Yevanim tried to instigate against us, and that is, there was another time in our history where the ox brought us trouble, and the ox lowered our madrega, and the ox dramatically and drastically altered the very essence of the personality of a Jew, and that, of course, is the Chet HaEgel, where at the Chet HaEgel it says, "Vayamiru es kavoidam betavnis shar oichel esav." The pasuk says in Tehillim. The Gra writes that at the Chet HaEgel, Klal Yisrael's neshamas were downgraded from Atzilus, and they were no longer considered to have the same DNA of God, and we were downgraded and relegated to the same status of the Umay Sa'ilam. That's what the Gra writes. Look at number 23. V'nei Yisrael nikru banim la'makayim shari lahem nishmas Atzilus. Aval ata yidei Chet HaEgel Parcha minayu hayziyarayla. The splendor flew away. V'lay nikroid banim. We're not called children. Kelam nishmasa now. We don't have the same soul. So the Yevanim said, we're going to abolish Chodesh, we're going to abolish Mila, we're going to abolish Shabbos, and we're going to remind you that you're not banim. You know how you're going to remember? Right on the horn of an ox. Remember the Chet HaEgel? At the Chet HaEgel, you lost your status of banim. By the way, this is confirmed by the fact that in Bamidbar Rabbah, when God gave us the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the Malach HaMaves, you have domain over all the nations of the world. This is number 25, Bamidbar Rabbah Lamed Beis Zayin, but not over the Jewish people, because they're my chelek. Shenemar, B'hanchel Elyon Goyim, ki chelek Hashem Amoy. But when the Jews sinned at the Egel, says Bamidbar Rabbah, they were no longer ki chelek Hashem Amoy. Meaning we lost ki chelek Hashem Amoy. And according to the Chesed Avram, ki chelek Hashem Amoy is where the idea of Banim Hashem Lekechem comes from. So the Yevanim in a way were right. They were correct. They told the Jews, yes, once upon a time God was matame himself to you because he reckoned you banim. And Yosef HaTzadik instituted Chodesh Milan Shabbos because you were God's banim. But then you sinned at the Egel and you no longer no longer deserved the status of banim. You lost the status of banim. Your neshama was not similar to Avicha Shabashamayim. He's not Aviv anymore. And therefore we're going to abolish Chodesh Milan Shabbos, and we're going to make you right, Ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. So, when we went back into the Heichal, and when we lit the Shemen, and the Avodah was restored, and we were able to bring back Chodesh Milan Shabbos, what Nusach says the Bnei Yissaschar, that the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, actually, Al Anisim was written by none other than Yochanan Kohen Gadol himself, because there are 124 words in Al Anisim, Keneged the Gematria of Yochanan, which is 124. Other Rishonim say there are 125 words in Al Anisim, because Yochanan Ba'an V'Sanusai wrote one more word in the Al Anisim than the Gematria of his name. Therefore, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah write, V'yachar kein bo'u banecha. When the Jews returned into the Heichal, they returned with the full glory of the status of Banim Atam L'Hashem Lekechem. The Yevanim wanted us to feel that we lost it. They were trying to be Oiker the Takana of Yosef. They were trying to remind us of what happened in the time of the Chet HaEgel. And therefore the Yochanan Kohen Gadol reminded us that when we returned into the Heichal, we returned with the full status of Banim Atam L'Hashem Lekechem. By the way, there's a kasha. You thought we were going to go a whole shiur without asking the question. You thought we're going to have a shiur on Chanukah, and we're not going to ask the question. I'm going to ask you the exact opposite question. Everybody wants to know why there are 8 days of Chanukah, there should be 7 days of Chanukah. I have a different way of looking at things. I think I'm going to ask you a different kasha. There should be 9 days of Chanukah. There are 8 days, and Sveika D'Yoma. To say Sveika D'Yoma, you don't have Sveika D'Yoma on D'Rabbanans? Really? The Mordechai asks, why don't we have Sveika D'Yoma on Purim? And the only answer the Mordechai gives is, because it says V'lo Yavor. You can't go beyond the 15th. But it doesn't say V'lo Yavor by Chanukah. So why don't we have Sveika D'Yoma? So now I'm going to ask the Beis Yosef's kasha. Beis Yosef asks, why do we have 8 days of Chanukah? There should only be 7. So, if you look at number 14, the Orchos Chaim of Aaron HaKohen Milunil quotes the Balo Itim, that you know why we have 8 days of Chanukah? Really, you're right, there should be 7 days. You know why we have 8? Because Chanukah has Rosh Chodesh. Chanukah has Shabbos. But we need 8 days, Keneged Milah. The 8th day is Keneged Milah. Says the Chida, according to that, that's why we don't have Seika the Yom on 9th day, because then you lose the Remez to Milah. The whole Chanukah is banoi on a Remez that we restored Chodesh, we restored Shabbos, and we restored Milah. If you're going to have 9, you lost the whole 8th day. In other words, the answer why we don't have the answer to the Beis Yosef's kasha of why we have an 8th day Keneged Milah is the answer why we don't have a 9th day, because we have to have a Remez to Milah. Okay, so we see Chanukah as a time that our status of Banim was restored. We were able to revert ourselves back to the takana of Yosef HaTzadik, which is what? Chodesh Milah and Shabbos. We do have a chelek in Hashem. Maybe then they were masakin to light with a psil, as the Netziv writes, the psil represents the concept of Banim Atem L'Hashem Lekechem, that ki chelek Hashem Amoy Yaakov Chevel Nachalasoi. But let's come back to Rabbi Meir, because after all we know that one of the very well-known shittos of Rabbi Meir is the Gemara in Kedushin Daf Lamed Vav. And that is, what is our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Rabbi Yehuda says, it depends how you act. If you're a good Yingala, then you're God's kid. If you're a bad Yingala, then you're adopted. Then you're Avadim. You're Avadim, right? Don't you wish you could say that? You know, your kids misbehave, and then people say, who are these kids? You say, I don't know, I found them, I took them in, took them in off the street. You can't do that. Your biological kid is your kid is your kid. It doesn't matter how they act, your kid is your kid. Rabbi Yehuda says, not us and God. With us and God, we do what we need to do, we're children. We're not doing what we need to do, then we're called Avadim. And Rabbi Meir marshals 4 psukim. That doesn't matter what we do. We could be foolish, we could be kaifrim, we could be oivdei avodah zara. Not only are we called banim, we're called banim toivim, we're called bnei kelchai. And famously, the Rashba writes in 2 Tshuvos, in Chelek Aleph Sim Kuf Tzadik Daled, and Chelek Aleph Sim Reish Mem Beis, that even though when there's a machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, we always paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, and there are no exceptions, 0 exceptions, there's one exception. What's the exception? This. When it comes to the machlokes, are we banim or are we avadim? We paskin like Rabbi Meir that what? Benkach ubenkach nikroim banim. Why do we paskin like like Rabbi Meir? We've said many reasons over the years. First of all, the Raja says because Rabbi Meir invokes 4 psukim to prove his point. That's the right we paskin like Rabbi Meir. The Sefer Emes Yaakov of Rav Shaltiel and the Samar Rebbe says the same thing. Is what's the reason we never passing like Rabbi Meir? Because Rabbi Meir was so deep, nobody ever understood what he's talking about. So that's when it's a machlokes relevant to this world. But if it's a machlokes relevant to how God looks at us, God was able to understand Shittas Rabbi Meir. And when it comes to if the Rebbeinu Shalom looks at us like a Av, yes, Rebbeinu Shalom understood Rabbi Meir. And then we said another pshat. Why are we passing like Rabbi Meir? This is brought by Rabbi Yehuda Leib Maimon, quoting a Tosfos and a Rosh, that typically Rabbi Meir is always quoted first in a Mishnah. Except for here. Typically, Divrei Rabbi Meir. Here, first Rabbi Yehuda, then Rabbi Meir. Why? To show that on this machlokes, Rabbi Meir has the last word. Comes Rabbi Vadi Yosef, and Rabbi Vadi says, I'm going to give you 2 more reasons why, when it comes to this machlokes, we paskin like Rabbi Meir. You ready? Because the truth is, there's somebody who supports Rabbi Meir. Who supports Rabbi Meir? There's a famous story. There's a famous narrative between Rabbi Kiva and Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus asks Rabbi Kiva, does God love the poor? Rabbi Kiva says, yeah, he loves the poor. So Turnus Rufus says, so why doesn't he give them food? So Turnus Rufus says that people who give tzedakah are going to go to Gehenna. Because a king decrees that somebody should go to jail. So what's going to happen if somebody sneaks in and feeds the guy? He's a morid b'malchus. So Rabbi Kiva says, bad mashal. I'll give you another mashal. The king puts his kid in jail, and someone comes and feeds the kid. What's the king going to do? He's going to reward him. Question. Turnus Rufus seems to be passing like Rabbi Yehuda. That when we're not doing the will of God, we're called avadim. However, Rabbi Kiva seems to be paskening that even when we're poor and we're oppressed, nevertheless we're considered the children of Hashem. That means Rabbi Akiva holds Benkach ubenkach nikroim banim. Rabbi Akiva holds no matter what we call banim. So you know why we paskin like Rabbi Meir? Because Rabbi Meir is a roiv against Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Akiva against Rabbi Yehuda. It's tag team now. It's Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Akiva against Rabbi Yehuda. Plus halacha Rabbi Akiva mechaverav. That's why the Rambam writes, by the way, in the Parsha Mishnayos, based on the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, that Mashiach will first appear in Tveria. Why? Because he can't appear anywhere else. Because if he appears anywhere else, the guy we're going to say, who are you coming for exactly? These people? What do you have with these people? There's only one person who can give a good reason why God's going to save us. Rabbi Meir! Rabbi Meir is the Murda Asra in Tveria. He paskins ben kach nikram banim. And if anyone's going to say, no, we don't paskin like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Akiva is going to stand up. He's also buried in Tveria. And he's going to say, we're right for the Bezdin. That's why Mashiach can only come in Tveria. That's brought in the Sefer Amos Yaakov. Says Rabbi Vadia, what mitzvah demonstrates that the halacha is like Rabbi Meir? Tzedakah. Tzedakah. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, in the Galus, we don't even understand how you're allowed to give tzedakah. The Parshas Drachim writes, the mitzvah of tzedakah is a raya to Rabbi Meir. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, that when we're not oisin ritzanu shel makam, you're not allowed to give tzedakah. The mitzvah of tzedakah demonstrates halacha Rabbi Meir. So comes the Yom Tov of Chanukah, and the Yom Tov of Chanukah demonstrates that as much as the Goyim would like us to feel we are not banim la'makam, and they could take away Chodesh, and they could take away Milah, and they could take away Shabbos, and they could say you're not a chelak of Hashem, and you could ride on the horn of the ox, and you could remember the Chet Egel as much as you want. The light of Chanukah is the light, the brightest light, the eternal light of we are always the children of Hashem. Who is able to tap into that light? Whose credo, whose life Shita embodies the message of Chanukah? This is Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir's teaching us, Ben kach nekram bonim. Therefore Rabbi Meir would go around saying, Elokah de Meir aneni. He wasn't talking about himself. As the Mashal says, he was talking about God. You who illuminated our lives in the times of Chanukah, when the Yevanim wanted us to feel that we are not the children of Hashem. You illuminated, you demonstrated, you proclaimed we are always the children of Hashem. You who are Meir Einenu in that Golus, please continue to be Meir Einenu in the current Golus. As we said, Mashiach will reveal himself in Tveria. This was the tefillah of Rabbi Meir. This is why Rabbi Meir is connected to the Yom Tov of Chanukah. He didn't mean me. Rabbi Meir didn't mean me when he said Elokah de Meir Aneni. He didn't mean himself. He meant Elokah de Meir Lanu in the times of Chanukah, Hu Yair Lanu in this current Galus. And therefore, we know, we don't give tzedakah le'ilei nishmas any other tanam. We don't say, giving tzedakah, Elokah de Reb Gamliel, Elokah de Reb Tarfain, Elokah de anybody. It's Elokah de Meir Aneni. Rabbi Vadia Yosef writes, the reason why Rabbi Meir is specifically associated with tzedakah is because we could only give tzedakah lefi shitas Rabbi Meir. Tzedakah only works according to Rabbi Meir. And that's why Chanukah, which is the Yom Tov of the light of Banim Atem L'Hashem Lekeichem, is specifically associated with the mitzvah of tzedakah. And that's why the Magen Avram writes, Noyagin hanaorim ha'aniyim l'savi b'Chanukah l'apsachim, and that's why the gematria of Chanukah ba'at bash is soid tzedakah, because this is the Yom Tif of the light of Banim Atem L'Hashem Lekeichem. Rabbi Say, have a great day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.